a series of high stakes exams that determined whether we would move to the next grade level, graduate from secondary school, or enter university. Over the last few months, however, as COVID-19 has forced the closure of over 90% of the world's schools, ministries of education everywhere have had to quickly rethink how to make those kinds of high stakes decisions about students' futures, but without the benefit of examinations, at least in some cases. And we're going to hear today how different countries have come up with different solutions to this very difficult situation. Over the course of 90 minutes, we'll hear from 4 presenters about some of the ways that countries have responded. We're going to start with a global overview of how countries around the world have decided to make these kind of high stakes decisions about their students' progression and pathways. And as we'll see from that presentation, there are probably 3 main approaches or responses that dominate: either a decision to cancel the examination and use another approach in its stead, or to proceed with the exam as normal, or to shift to an online mode. And each of our 3 country-specific presentations is going to highlight one of those approaches. And you'll see that there is no one right or wrong way. It's different approaches that work for different contexts. After we've had those country-specific cases, we're going to shift to Q&A, and we'll have about 30 minutes for that. I should point out a few housekeeping issues. The webinar is going to be in English with simultaneous interpretation into French. I would kindly ask you to mute your microphones, to put questions in the chat box, and I'm sure you will have lots of questions. And enjoy yourself, and let's learn together about what different countries are doing to help make these very difficult but very important decisions. Before we get to our presenters, I'd like to turn things over briefly to Jaime Saavedra, who is the Global Director for Education at the World Bank, who is going to make some introductory remarks to set the scene for us today. Thank you very much, and over to you, Jaime.
Thank you very much, Marguerite. I just want to check, can you see me and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you very much, because I had some trouble with the connection. So thanks much, Marguerite. So as Marguerite was saying, most of us in the course of our lives, we have had to take high stakes exam at some point, whether it was to graduate from high school, whether it was to enter the university or get a certification. And we all remember how much time and effort both students, families, and education systems put in preparing to something that is extremely important in terms of determining future paths in life. And in many cases around the world, across the whole middle income countries, that's the case today. High stakes exams is a reality of life. In many cases, this high stakes exams with high stakes exams not all measure what they have to measure, and separate for those high stakes exams than others. But still, there are education systems around the world, and before COVID-19 struck with full force, students in most parts of the world were at different stages of preparing for those exams for these months, and they had their image was they of that what they were going to go through.
Okay, I think we're having a connection problem to Jaime. Jaime, can you hear me?
What they were going to go through. At least if you can hear me. No?
Yeah, the connection is very broken, Jaime. I think it's just a bad connection. Your voice is coming in and out. I don't know if you can do anything about that.
So can you hear me? I lost the video.
Yeah, it's very broken.
Yeah, I will have to switch. I will have to switch devices, Margaret. I
Okay.
think it's better that you can you hear me.
Maybe we'll.
But at least
Okay,
so
why
that you continue.
Yes.
And hello. I'll come back later in the session.
That's fine. Okay. Thank you very much, Jaime. Yes. Okay. We'll keep moving.
So please continue, and I
That's
join later
fine.
in the session, please.
We'll do that. Thank you very much, Jaime. And yeah, a pity the connection wasn't great, but let's keep moving. So we're going to.
Hello, can you?
Okay, we're going to head into our first presentation now, and this is going to provide a global overview of where things stand in general across the world in terms of how countries are deciding what to do about their high stakes examinations, and in the situations where they're deciding to cancel them, what they're doing instead. So I'd like to invite Mr. Guangchao Chang. He is Chief of the Section of Education Policy in the Division of Policies and Lifelong Learning Systems at UNESCO, who's going to provide us with an 8-minute presentation on this global overview. So Guangchao, over to you.
Thank you, Margaret. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. It is a great pleasure for me to be back in this webinar to share with you the global status of high-stake exams or high-stakes decision-making on the pathway and the progression of students in our education systems. As you all know, with COVID-19 forcing school closures and bans on group gatherings, countries have had to revisit their approaches to high-stake decision-making, particularly that concerning high-stakes examinations. In an effort to monitor national education responses to the COVID-19 pandemic, UNESCO, the World Bank, and UNICEF have collaborated to conduct a survey in May through early June on different approaches and strategies countries have taken to cope with the situation of school closures. The findings that I'm going to share with you now are drawn from the answers to questions of the survey related to learning assessment and examinations, providing a snapshot of decisions taken by governments related to high-stakes exams in these particular contexts. There were 118 countries which responded to the survey that you can see on the map displayed on the screen. For your information, our previous analysis conducted in April that I presented covers close to 8 countries only. According to our survey, countries have taken different measures to assess student learning during this period. the top 3 measures taken by countries covered in the survey in assessing student learning are through online learning platforms, phone calls to students, and paper-based and take-home materials. It's interesting to see also there are some countries that use TV or radio to monitor student learning, which can be very interesting to dig out further and to share this experience. When it comes to how different countries have assessed the student learning during school closures, we observed that online learning platform has been a preferred option in countries with a relatively high level of technology like Europe, Middle East, Eastern and Southeastern Asia, and Latin America and the Caribbean. And countries in North Africa seem to be the ones that only use no-tech approaches to assess student learning, that is preparing and sending materials home for students. High-stakes exams exist at all levels of education, as you can see on this slide, including at the end of primary. So at least 63 countries of the countries covered by the survey, deploy high-stake exams at the different levels of education. It's not a surprise to see that these exams are mostly prominent at the end of secondary level and also for entrance to the tertiary level, as they are used to make decisions about school leaving and or student university entrance, corresponding respectively to 86% and 74% of countries covered in the survey. The next slide shows the different options that countries have taken for managing high-stake exams across different levels of education. First is a postponement or rescheduling of exams, which was the most frequent choice taken by countries for high-stake exams for all levels of education. And where exam dates were maintained as planned, necessary measures such as physical distancing of students and staggered exams were also taken. At the secondary level, this is the level where exam dates were kept the most in 22 countries. There are also 8 countries that choose staggered exams option, and also 22 countries have decided to reduce the curriculum content to be assessed at the secondary education level. This confirms that the exams at this level bear the highest stake among the levels of education. This is also at this level that adaptation is made the most for managing high-stake exams. As compared with the secondary education level, a fewer number of countries seems to have maintained the exams date, at, for instance, at primary level as well as tertiary level. And another finding is that the exams were cancelled the most at the primary education level, with very limited cases of online exams at this level, while at the tertiary level, education systems organize online exams more than in other education levels. This seems to be consistent with the trend observed for alternatives to assessment and validation of learning, especially at the tertiary level. We find that more alternative ways to assessment and validation of student learning have been used. These trends are understandable given the fact that the students seem to be more mature, or they are more mature at higher levels of education. Therefore, online exams as well as alternative ways to examination and the validation of student learning are used more often at this level. The second slide shows that some comparison between the situation in April and the one in June, early June. UNESCO has organized a webinar in early April to facilitate discussion on how governments around the world have been managing high-stake exams during the early stage of the COVID-19. And since then, the situation has evolved, which can be observed as follows. First, postponement rescheduling of the examinations remains the most common strategy being adopted so far. Second, most adaptations have been made to the exams at the secondary level, confirming that this is a level where the most critical high-stake decisions making is being considered. Third is the higher the education level, the more alternatives to exams and validations or validation of learning, and the more online exams were conducted. So I'm now going to turn to the last slide, which shows some supplementary qualitative information countries have shared through this survey about the key challenges and policy measures they have taken to address them. So basically, four categories of challenges and the corresponding policy measures, as you can see there. The first one is about inaccessibility of traditional and online learning. Different categories shared these challenges, and unpreparedness for education in emergency, like Indonesia, limited teacher capacity, and especially in ICT capacity of teachers, especially in ICT skills. Maldives raised this challenge, and also lack of health safety measures like in Indonesia, Maldives, and other countries. To cope with these challenges, countries have taken a number of measures, such as improving access to remote learning through better ICT infrastructure and the availability of devices. There are many countries who share the experience in this. And also the second, adapting curricula and assessment for distance learning, like Albania, Cuba, Georgia, Honduras, Hungary, Tonga, and also Trinidad and Tobago, and strengthening capacity for crisis-sensitive planning, and also implementing health and safety measures and physical distancing measures. There are different countries that shared this information through the survey. So this is quickly the findings of country responses to COVID-19, especially focusing on high-stakes decision making relating to exams assessment. I'm going to stop here and would be happy to answer any questions you may have at the end towards the end of this webinar. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Quang Chol. And I think we can all see there's a huge amount of data there that has yet to be analyzed. You've got data for 118 countries, so I think there's a real treasure trove there for people to look into. We've already shared the link to the database, which is available on the UNESCO website, so people can explore further after this webinar. Now we're going to shift from a global perspective to a country-specific perspective. We're going to have 3 country presentations, one after each other. Each presenter is going to have 10 minutes to share their country experience. They'll start with a brief overview of their country's education system, so you understand the context. They'll introduce you to how the country made high-stakes decisions using exams prior to COVID-19, and then they'll explain how COVID-19 has affected their high-stakes decision-making process. So we're going to start with the case of a country where they cancelled the high-stakes exam and they're using other means for making high-stakes decisions about students. And this case is the case of the United Kingdom. And to tell us about it, I'm very pleased to introduce our first country speaker. It's Professor Joshua McGrain, who's an associate professor and deputy director of the Oxford University Centre for Educational Assessment. So over to you, please, Joshua. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Marguerite. I'll just try to share the relevant screen now. And can I just check that now that I've done that, that you can see the screen correctly? It's not coming up with notes or anything like that?
That looks good, Josh. Yeah, that looks
fine.
good.
Okay, thanks very much. All right, so I'll just commence by saying thank you to the World Bank, UNESCO and UNICEF for giving me this opportunity to talk to you about this issue today. It's one that's been a very pressing one around the world, but particularly gained a lot of attention in the UK. So just to introduce myself, I'm Associate Professor Joshua McGrain. I'm from the Oxford University Centre for Educational Assessment. Now, some of you may have picked up by now that I don't actually have a British accent, and that's because I'm Australian, and I've been living in the UK for about 4 years now. And so I hope you find the foreigner's take on the UK system, because I've come here and had to navigate it and learn it from scratch, and it's quite complex even in the absence of coronavirus. So I hope that's a benefit to the people listening. And just for full disclosure, I should say that I am actually partially funded in my position by AQA, who are an exam board in the UK, but I work completely independently of them. I also sit on the research advisory committees of both AQA and Qualifications Wales, and I just want to make it explicit that everything I'm about to say are my own views and nothing to do with either of those organisations. So now that I have that initial stuff out of the way, the UK education system, well, as it's already been pointed out, the examinations have been cancelled across the UK, but just to be clear, there's no single UK education system. It's been devolved to the 4 home nations, and that devolution has been taking place over the last 2 to 3 decades. And so what do I mean by these home nations? Well, this refers to England, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland, and each of these have their own departments, authorities, national curriculum, etc. And of the 4, Scotland is definitely the most distinct from the other 3, although both Northern Ireland and Wales have made reforms in more recent years that take them away in key details from England. And just to be clear that within the UK context, but particularly when talking about England, Wales and Northern Ireland, and particularly England, that examination boards are the awarding bodies that are responsible for setting and awarding the secondary education level qualifications in the UK. Okay, so in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, there's a list of them there, AQA, OCR, Pearson, etc. And so there's a market-based approach, particularly within England. And so you have a lot of competition between the examination boards, and the schools and colleges themselves can choose which particular exam boards, examinations they're going to sit for particular subjects. And so it's quite a complex system in that way. Now, in the English context, in the context of England, they're overseen by the government regulator Ofqual, and in Wales you have Qualification Wales, and in Northern Ireland you have CCEA. Now in Scotland, that's just a one-stop shop approach, which I'm more familiar with from my Australian background, and that's the Scottish Qualifications Authority. So from here on in, for sake of brevity and simplicity, I'm more going to refer to what's happened in England. Okay, so in the summer of 2020, that series of exams have been completely cancelled. In March, the Secretary of State for Education in the UK, Gavin Williamson, announced that this exam series will be cancelled in order to help fight the spread of the coronavirus. This includes a number of secondary examinations, so GCSE, AS and A levels. Now AS is just simply the first year of the 2-year A-level qualification, the extended project qualification and the advanced extension award in maths. Now again, for brevity's sake, I will be focusing on the second year of the upper secondary qualification, referred to as A2 there. Now approximately 200,000 A2 students have been affected in England by this cancellation. So what were the A-levels like prior to COVID-19? Well, it's a linear assessment, and what does that mean? It means that it's 100% completed at the end of the qualification. And actually, quite curiously, England switched from modular assessment in early 2015. So this switch from modular assessment to linear assessment has created a little bit more of a headache, because up until 2015, they would have already been several modular assessments that would have taken place prior to this summer series of exams. But it was changed for various reasons, and so Now they have a linear approach, and within the context of England, the AES levels, so the examinations that may be taken at the end of the first year, contribute nothing to the final full A-level qualification in England, and 40% in Wales and Northern Ireland. Now, students typically participate in 3 A-level subjects in the second year, and they receive a separate grade for each. There are 6 pass-level grades and 1 fail for this particular qualification. It involves a combination of examination and non-examination based assessment depending on the subject. So in England, both are conducted by the exam boards at the end of the qualification, and so both are not available for 2020. Within the exam board context, most of the marking is done by ex-teachers, anywhere upward of 95% plus, and there are very stringent rules and moderation processes to ensure accuracy and comparability of marking both across the subjects but also across the exam boards, given that complication of the many exam boards that there are in the UK setting exams and awarding qualifications. And in particular, the mark thresholds for achieving a certain grade, or what are typically referred to as the grade boundaries in the subject, are set independently each year by the exam boards with oversight by Ofqual to maintain standards. And again, that maintenance of standards is to ensure that, for example, an A-star grade means the same thing in English as it does in maths, as it does in history, etc. That this is maintained across the exam boards, and also that this is maintained over time as well. So a student finishing in 2019 who got an A-star in a subject, it has the equivalent attainment as someone in 2020 who received the same grade for the same subject. So the grade boundary setting is based on both expert judgment and statistical evidence. Now I'm going to focus on the statistical evidence here because this becomes relevant to the solutions that have been proposed. So this statistical evidence draws on the current year's cohort's prior attainments. So for the A-level qualification, they're drawing on the GCSE grades. So this is the qualification they take at the age of 16, and that's being used to predict the overall national proportions of A-level grades that should be expected for that cohort. So it's not predicting it for individuals, it's predicting it for the national cohort. So exam boards must provide evidence to Ofqual to justify any circumstances where there are any marked differences from these predictions, and Ofqual goes through a process to decide whether they accept that or not. If they accept it, then it's fine. If they don't, they go back to the exam board and they must redraw the grade boundaries. Now, another curiosity of the system here is that because of the timing of what they refer to as the awarding season, schools also submit predicted grades for each of their students applying for university to the Universities and College Admission Service prior to the examination. So if a student in England wants to go to university, then they will, of course, sit the A-level qualification and they will submit their application for universities through UCAS. And because they do not actually receive their exam grades in time that the universities need to process applications, start giving out offers and these sorts of things, the teacher actually submits for them a predicted grade to UCAS. And so just to be clear, the student must ultimately achieve the required grades for their selected degree. The actual final admission is not based on these predicted grades, but it is used in the admissions process. So existing research actually shows that...
Sorry, Josh. Sorry
Yep.
to interrupt you, but could you put your slides in full screen mode? Currently, we can see the primary slide and the secondary one coming up. It might help people see the text a bit more clearly. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. Right.
Okay, so this data regarding the predicted grades actually has been subject to quite a bit of research as well, and the existing research shows that about 40% of single predicted grades and 75% of the set of the 3 predicted grades, so you have the set of 3 in any one of them, right, for the students are overly optimistic. Now this will become relevant in So what is happening now that the A-level examinations have been cancelled? So the decision has been made in England, and it's similar across the other 3 countries, but with key differences. So I'll focus on England, that each student will receive a calculated grade for each of their subjects. So these calculated grades will be determined and standardised using 5 sources of information. The central one will be the centre assessment grades. So this is a predicted grade for students for each of their subjects provided by their school or college. They'll also take account of a ranking of students within each of these centre assessment grade levels, which will be provided by their school college. So just to be explicit, from a school within a particular subject, they will say we expect X A star grades, X A grades, X B grades, etc. And then within each of those grade levels, they will provide a rank ordering of the students. The third piece of information that will be taken on board is the expected grade distribution at the national level. The centres, meaning the school or colleges, historical grade distribution over the past 1 to 3 years, and the school or college's predicted grade distribution based on the prior attainment of the current cohort in the GCSEs. So these centre assessment grades, what are they? Well, they've been instructed to be a holistic professional judgment, balancing different sources of evidence and data for each of the students within a subject. They're decided by the subject team within a school or college and signed off by the head teacher in each school or centre and submitted to the relevant exam board for standardisation. They can be based on any of the following information: progress review, data, classwork, bookwork, etc., any non-exam assessment that was carried out by the school or college, the AS level examination performance for the students if they in fact sat those examinations, any class or homework assessments or mock practice exams provided by the school, and previous year's results in your school or college, meaning please take account of the previous year's cohorts and the distributions of grades that they tended to achieve. Now, these are going to be standardised by the exam boards using what is a still confidential statistical formula decided by Ofqual, so I can't share with you what that specific formula is, but it is in the public domain that this will take account of 3 sources of information: the prior attainment profile of the school's students, so that cohort within your school, their GCSE performance, the school's grade distribution over the past 1 to 3 years, and the expected national grade distribution. And it's important to note that this process will not change the rank of students provided by schools, and adjustments may be subject specific within a school. So again, to be concrete, the schools will submit their centre assessment grades to the relevant exam board. Then the distribution of these grades will be checked in terms of these 3 pieces of information: the prior attainment of that cohort, how the school has done historically, as well as the expected national grade distribution. And any 3 of those factors can either pull down the distribution or push up the distribution, depending on whether this standardisation process suggests that the school has been overly optimistic or pessimistic for its cohort of students. So certain equity issues that might come through from this. Ofqual have actually paid a lot of attention to this, and they've released guidance to ensure that these school assigned grades are objective as possible, including guidance about particularly common cognitive biases. They've also released a review, which they refer to as an equality impact assessment. Now, this includes a review of relevant studies of potential biases in teacher assessment, and that has revealed that gender and age have small effects which are inconsistent across subjects. So, for example, girls tend to be over-predicted in the case of mathematics and under-predicted in the case of English, is what the evidence suggests. And it also suggested that there are likely effects of ethnicity and disadvantage, but they're actually the opposite to what you may expect, where based on the predicted grades data they have from the past, that these students from certain minority ethnic groups or from low-income backgrounds tend to be over-predicted in terms of their predicted grades, meaning that the predicted grades are a little bit optimistic from the teacher. And the other major equity issue is what's referred to as private students. So these are students who are not affiliated with a school or college, a centre, and so this includes homeschooled students. This may also include students who are resitting certain qualifications. So they didn't get the grade that they wanted the last time, so they've decided to resit it and they study for it independently. And so there's a real issue there in terms of how can these students have valid centre assessment grades assigned to them when in some cases the school or centre that they're doing the qualification through don't really know much about them at all. Now I can say that a reasonable proportion of these students are resit students, meaning that they have gone through a particular school or college before and they're resitting at a later point in time. So in that case, the centre may be able to provide valid grades for these students too.
Okay.
So
Josh, can I ask you just to take another minute to finish up? I'm just conscious of the time and to allow everyone to do their presentation. Thank you. Thanks.
So the consequences of this, well, although there is some optimism to be had from the predicted grades, right, we have to remember that the predicted grades and the centre assessment grades are for very different purposes. They have different stakes. And in the case of the centre assessment grades, they're actually for the entire cohort of students, not just those applying for university. So given that some schools and teachers will have much greater experience with estimating their students' grades and providing these predicted grades, and some other schools may not, and in particular in the case where schools have a lot of students from disadvantaged backgrounds. So there's a risk of biased grades still for certain groups. There's other UK research, for example, carried out by the Sutton group suggests that teachers may underestimate the abilities of students from disadvantaged backgrounds, and the standardisation procedure may also have some bias against late bloomers. So, for example, those people who may not have necessarily tried particularly hard for their GCSE qualification, but really came through with the goods in the A-level qualification. There's also potential consequences of risk of litigation against the regulator. So there's been already reports in the Guardian newspaper, for example, of parents considering litigation against the regulator in terms of this decision. And also that universities may make greater use of unconditional offers. Now, the universities who tend to make the most use of unconditional offers are from have a connection to the opportunity gap, because they tend to be universities that are not as, let's say, positively regarded as some of the others. And so in terms of issues of social and cultural capital that a university affords you in addition to your education, that this can have flow-on effects in terms of the opportunity gap. So to finish up, this won't be the end of examinations in the UK context. In England in particular, the exams will be back. They have proposed an optional autumn series of exams for those students that were registered for this summer series. So if you're unhappy with your calculated grade, you will have an opportunity to sit these exams, but the flow-on effect of that is it puts you a year behind in terms of university entrance. And all students may also sit, who were registered for this summer, may sit the exams next summer as well. But again, this puts you a year behind, and everything is expected to return to business as usual in the summer of 2021. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Professor McGrain. And it certainly sounds like a very complicated, tricky process to come up with an alternative to the traditional exams, but hopefully it'll work out well for the UK. We're now heading to the other end, or the other extreme. We're going to hear about a country where they're proceeding with their exams basically as normal. They're proceeding with in-person exams, and this is the case of Ecuador. So I'd like to invite Vice Minister Aldo Meno, who is the Vice Minister of Higher Education in Ecuador, to tell us about the story of his country and how they're handling examinations in the context of COVID-19. I'd just like to ask if people can try to stick to their 10 minutes for their presentation, just so that we have enough time for the Q&A afterwards. Thank you very much. And over to you now, Vice Minister Aldo. Thanks.
Thank you, Margaret. Good morning to everybody, afternoon or evening for some of you. Yeah, my name is Aldo Meno. I'm actually the Vice Minister of Higher Education in Ecuador. I'm going to present the Ecuadorian case. I'd like to be brief. And this is a big picture, an overview of the system. We have 60 universities in total, with they're composed of 3 public universities, 19 private, 8 co-financed universities, what we call that they receive some money from the government, and 3 universities only for graduate degrees. In this system of universities, we have a 632,000 students and a faculty of 35,000. Then we have the technological institutes. That's like associate degree. It's a bigger system there. It's composed of 234 technological institutes nationwide. 91 are public and 143 are private. There are 50,000 students only in the public system, and overall the whole system is composed of 750,000 students and 38,000 faculty. This is the enrollment offer. I try to go from 2012 just to see how it evolved. And as you can see, this number is the number of public enrollment offer that we do that's only for the public system that is completely free in Ecuador. We do have here a peak. This is a semester 2 of 2018. We introduced here, it's interesting, we introduced here the online offer. However, it just balanced it out in the next semester because there was a change on the prep course from each university. They had to assume some budget from their own budget that they were planned for that year, so they had to reduce the offer. However, we try to manage it, and now this last semester we actually could handle a 30% increase in offer. Now, to get into the subject, this is the access to internet in Ecuador. This is a great overview. 20% of households have portable computers at home. That means laptop or tablet. 24% have desktops, computers at home. 37% have internet plans at home, just meaning the Wi-Fi or a contract with a provider at home. And this is the most interesting part. 59% of the population have smartphones, from which 78% of those are in the age group of 16 to 24 years old, which are actually students. Now, some strategies that we have taken towards COVID-19 emergency, just some of them, we actually try to deal with the National Corporation of Telecommunications to increase capacity in the technological institutes, meaning some internet service, and to allow more space for platforms and connections, simultaneous connections. We had, of course, to train some faculty in an online mode. We had, of course, tried to modify the online learning outcomes, meaning that to online, of course, meaning that we had to reduce some community engagement programs and try to focus only on the online possibilities. We had to develop an equipment or phones or tablets and internet plans provided in some universities, of course, to students at the lower quartiles. We had to take some preventions and safety measures, adaptations, of course, and we had to launch the online universities admission process that it was already it was already started for semester one. It was actually supposed to start in April, and we had to postpone it to May. And some universities actually did start in in June. So, but everybody, the whole system now is operating fully online. We also had to approve a temporary regulation for conducting academic activities due to coronavirus sanitary emergency. Some of them, for example, their programs and courses had to change completely and adapted completely to online. There was an in-person programs, of course. We provide prevent actually some blended format for the coming semester if situation actually still as it is now, at least controlled. We also approve a no increase tuition fees for 2020 on any other cost for either, well, public, it's a gratuity, but for private institutions. And also we do have 2 ordinary academic periods, the semesters for us. We allowed an extension up to 25% of the length of the semester, just in case any university needed to more time to adapt to the change in format. And we also allow an increase for faculty in a maximum hours per week in lectures to up to 25%. I mean, providing that some faculty probably stop doing some research project or some community engagement projects.
Sorry,
Now,
Vice Minister Minor, just to let you know, you have around 3 minutes left. So
okay.
if you want to plan your time accordingly.
I'm going to move faster. Thank you. Now, for our entrance or selectivity test, we actually had a combined exam with the Ministry of Education and our National Secretary of Higher Education. The test was covered in 4 fields: math, language and literature, and natural sciences and social studies. It was an in-person, computer-based, but offline exam. Now, the Ministry of Education decided to cancel their part of their exam, and then we stand alone with our exam, and we decided to move forward with our exam in person, of course. Now we're working on this new exam to guarantee actually 3 things. We guarantee a shorter exam, a more pertinent exam, and a transparent exam. It will be administered in person, but it's going to be an online at universities, at some university of the 60 that we have nationwide. We estimate 180,000 test takers for August 2020. It was actually postponed from July to August. And we're gonna, of course, put for free online simulator for preparation. And this is the last one. This is how the old exam and the new exam are gonna look like, the differences. It was the old exam, we call it Ser Bachiller. The old exam had 120 items. Now the new one is gonna have 80 items or questions. It was set to be taken in 2 hours and 30 minutes. Now it's reduced to 1 hour and 30 minutes. It was mandatory for all students seeking high school diplomas. And now we made it voluntary for high school students. And it is mandatory only for students applying for higher ed public institutions. Previously we had the combination of a Ministry of Education. Now we're doing it on our own, and it is still going to have the 4 fields. Plus, we're adding an abstract reasoning throughout the test. And what we want to achieve with this is reduce the number of test takers. We had 445,000 test takers in 2019. Now we estimate to have 350. That is a reduction of 21% of test takers, including, the reduce of the risk of having these people, around the country taking the exam. we plan to have pretty much the same applicants, 315,000. And we plan actually to enroll a little bit more people, 205,000 new enrollment compared to 180,000. And also that means a 65% acceptance rate compared to 58% acceptance rate. Now, unforeseen, if I have a few seconds, unforeseen situations, there are many. We are kind of prepared to any situation. We don't know with this virus, we don't know what can happen in the next 24 hours. So this is what we have planned so far. However, we have actually discussed, and I want to thank World Bank for all the help that they have given to us. But we have plans, and our plan B probably would be, if things get worse, which we don't expect, to maybe cancel the exam and just take the academic background, just like the previous case of the UK. However, so far we are good with this, and we feel very comfortable that it's going to be a great journey for Ecuador in this new entrance or selectivity test. That is going to be, thank you all.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister Maino, and hopefully things move ahead and you won't have to cancel this new exam. I'd now like to turn to our final speaker, who is going to talk about what is maybe an in-between approach, neither cancelling the exam nor proceeding with an in-person exam, but moving the exam to an online format. And to tell us about this is Dr. Hussam Zaman, who is the president of the Education and Training Evaluation Commission in Saudi Arabia. And he's going to talk to us about the case of Saudi Arabia's online examinations. Over to you, Dr. Zaman. Thank you.
Hello. Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this very important topic in this critical time. I would like to share with you our experience in Saudi Arabia about how we dealt with the high-stake exam, the entrance exam to universities during the time of COVID-19. Excuse me, I'm just having difficulty sharing my screen.
Okay, if you're having difficulty, we can ask the UNESCO team maybe to show your slides.
If it's it's possible to do that.
Okay.
Sorry for. Yes, I think I can do it now. Okay. Is it?
Yes.
Is it clear?
Okay. We can see. Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay. In my presentation, I will talk about the overview about the Saudi Arabia education system and our approach to high-stake decision making regarding during the time of COVID-19. And also, I'm going to with you briefly about some issues relating to this implementation of the high-stake exam using online format. The system in education and the education system in Saudi Arabia is very typical in its structure in terms of it's financed by the Ministry of Finance, governed and regulated by the public and higher education by the Ministry of Education and the TVTC. The quality assurance is done by the ETIC, our organization, Education and Training Evaluation Commission, It's an independent organization responsible for testing and accreditation and evaluation of the whole education system, in addition to some supporting agencies like Mawhiba for Gifted Student and Tatweer and other organizations. In ETIC, we have 4 national centers under the umbrella of ETIC: the National Center for Assessment and the National Center for Evaluation and Excellence in Schools, and the NCAA for Accreditation Higher Education, and the NC for Training and Evaluation and Accreditation. The one that is the focus in our discussion now is the National Center for Assessment, which is the center responsible for over the period of 20 years to design and implement the high-stake exam in the country. The ethics scopes, I'm just leaving this right now for the for the time, but as you can see that our system, the education system in Saudi Arabia, is a huge system. We have more than 7.67 million students. The teacher and faculty is 558,000, and the administration, the administrators and technician is about 196,000. Number of schools is 23,000. Universities and colleges in the kingdom is 68. And technical and vocational training is about 1,278 institutions. The Saudi approach to high-stake decision-making with the use of exam, we have the high school final grades. This is designed and implemented by schools, and this is under the umbrella of Ministry of Education. And we have the general aptitude test called Qudrat or GAT. It's designed and implemented by ETIC, and fortunately it has been implemented before the curfew for COVID-19. And the standardized achievement admission test, also designed and implemented by ETIC as an evidence-based assessment of biology, chemistry, physics, and mathematics with the recognition of international benchmark. And this was scheduled to be delivered paper and pencil in 2 periods, one in April and the other one in early June. And as you know, we couldn't do that considering our traditional way of delivering this test. This is just another information about our National Center for Assessment and the wide spectrum of tests that is delivered there. But let's talk about the SAT online exam experience. At the time, in early March, when we decided about shifting from the paper and pencil in-person exams to online exams, there are different criteria that we have to consider in choosing a suitable platform to implement the exam. And it was about 12 standards, technical and educational standards that help us in deciding which platform will suit our purpose better, particularly considering the number of target students for this exam, which is about more than 300,000 students. We ended up with about 4 options, and finally we decide on the option that offer the exam in kind of application in a computer, either laptop or desktop, that is doesn't need internet connection the whole time during the exam, but we just need it and log in and log out and uploading the test to the server. The online exam component we have was consisting of the equipment, the proctoring, the registration, and exam construction. For student preparation for the online exams, we just assure the students that and publish that publicly, that the exam will be similar to the exams they used to have, except that we will not have these questions relating to the last semester in which the COVID-19 took place. And it's also, we offer free online tutoring through one of our platforms in ETIC. In addition, we offer technical preparation through videos, infographics, online and center technical support. And also, we organize all students to have a mandatory mock examination before the exam, just to be sure that they have all the needed technical support before they get into the actual exam. This is, you know, considering the number of students we about to serve, it was more than 300,000 students. We know that not all of these students has the needed technology to perform the exam. So in addition to offering and supporting all these students who are willing to take the exam and they have the equipment needed to take it at home, also we offer the exam through our computerized test ETIC centers around the country. We have more than 62 centers around the kingdom. We implement the precautionary procedures that is, you know, essential to assure the student safety, entering and exiting the centers, and, you know, having distance between each student that secure their safety. But the exam was the same. It's all about 44 questions, 1 hour. The score out is 100, and we offer the online proctoring for the online exams, and the proctoring is live person in the centers. We also run the content validity and the reliability test for the exams, comparing to our traditional exams, and the scores comparing the full exam and the split half reliability exam. Then also we, you know, the issue of integrity of the test and the procedures of monitoring, there might be violation of the online achievement test. It was the 5 steps, starting with the artificial intelligence report, followed by human review of these videos recorded during the exams of all students. It takes about work of more than 250 full-time, you know, reviewers for about 10 days and 10 hours a day. Then we have another committee that looks at the violation videos in which the human review assure what the artificial intelligence report said about some violation. So this committee will look at this, check the scores of the student with some statistical assessment, and then they decide on the violation of the exam.
Okay.
Please just
Sorry, Dr. Zaman, would you mind just taking a couple more minutes to focus on the highlights, and then we'll have time for questions. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
It's okay. The artificial intelligence and human review report of the exams, they give us, you know, these statistics. About 88% of the students, they fully comply with the rules and regulation of the online exam. About 2%, it's an explicit violation of the regulation of the exam. And we have 10% that needs re-examination and revisit from the audit committee in ETIC. As I said, we organized and arranged for mandatory mock exam for all students. So during during 6 days of mandatory mock exam, we have about more than 200,000 students registered for this. The number of successful students during that mandatory mock exam was about 169,000 students. So the percentage of students who are ready for the online exam was about 95%. The other 100,000 students has to take an exam in our centers, as I said before. Actually, there was a great support from other governmental agencies that help us, in delivering and organizing this shift from paper and pencil to online exam. And here just, to mention some of these organizations. To assure the equitable access to online exam to all students were given the options to sit for the exam at their home or at ETIC computerized exam centers with minimum technical requirements and internet connection required only for upload and download. Actually, we just found out that, this should be not just, an emergency solution for the high-stake test during the COVID-19. Actually, we find out that that could be, a strategic solution for delivering this high-stake exam to this high, expanding number of students year after year. So the digital transformation of our assessment has become like a strategy for ETIC, and we are deciding to expand our platforms, diversify it, make sure that it suits different targeted groups. Actually find out that there are many benefits, for delivering and organizing the online exams. Direct and indirect exam cost reduction, quick exam results, multiple attempts of sitting for the exam online, precision and validity of the exam, and establish national excellence in online exams, and potential investment actually in digital transformation for our organization and in the education system in general in the kingdom. I will stop here, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share our experience, and I'm very delighted to be here and to get your questions and contribution to this experiment. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Zaman. That was a really impressive description of what Saudi Arabia is doing to move things online. And thank you to all of our speakers. I think each story, each case study is fascinating. And it's obvious that no matter which approach you choose, it's complicated and it's not business as usual. We now have about 20 minutes left for questions. And I would ask those who would like to ask questions, if you could please put your question in the chat box. Open up the chat box, put in your question, send it to everyone, and then we'll pull questions from the chat box and ask them to our speakers. So while we're waiting for people to submit questions, I have a question of my own that maybe I can get things started. I think there's a lot of very interesting initiatives going on both in the UK, in Ecuador, in Saudi Arabia, that's doing things differently and pushing people to do things differently. So that's something COVID-19 has pushed us out of our comfort zone. And there's probably things that you're doing now that even when COVID-19 is no longer around, that maybe your country would still want to do because it's better than what was happening before COVID-19. So I wonder, could I ask each speaker to reflect on what out of what is happening currently in their country due to COVID-19 they think should be kept on afterwards, because it makes these kind of high stakes decisions better, fairer, more efficient, more valid in some way. So maybe we could start with Professor McGrain and then go to Vice Minister Moynihan and then Dr. Zaman.
Well, I think the interesting thing in the UK's response, or let me focus on England because that was the focus of my presentation, is been the recourse to teacher professional judgment. And so in the absence of these examinations, with them all being cancelled, it's really come back to the professional judgment of teachers within schools, and you know, placing a level of trust in them to make reliable, valid judgments and free of bias and as objective as possible. And I think that will be a positive thing moving forward if that could be integrated more so into the system. But you know, I don't expect that to be the case.
Okay, thank you. Vice Minister Moina?
Yes, I mean, there are a couple of things that we actually learned and probably we'd like to keep. One of them is the fast and quick responsiveness to difficult situations. We're going to have to be prepared for any other situation like this. When we changed to the online format, it was dramatic. It was just dramatic. Not even students were ready. Professors weren't ready, universities weren't ready. So, but now we learned a lesson that we can do it, and we can do a very good job on some courses and programs online. So the big step that I believe that we have gained from all this is that we lost fear to online. Now, students actually are asking, some of them, of course, are asking just to stay in the same way. And the government also have heard those voices, and it was approved, the regulation that in the next 15 days, for example, just an example, for the next 15 days, all the in-person programs or face-to-face programs, they have the possibility to switch to the one online or a blended learning format with a very expedited process. So just in order to keep it for the next semester like that, and so on and so forth. So so I believe that we've learned a very good lesson, and the hard way, unfortunately, but it's been very productive to us.
Okay, that's good. Dr. Zaman, any reflections?
Yes, actually, I wanted to echo Aldo's comment about that. We fortunately we just get away from our field from online, and that we feel more confident, you know, and in what the technology offered to us, particularly the artificial intelligence proctoring of the exams. We all were very skeptical at the beginning about how effective, you know, this kind of proctoring and assuring the quality of exam and the exam taking will be using without any human intervention, you know, and reviewing and monitoring student all the time. But you know, we just find out that actually it's very sensitive, and we need the human intervention later on, just to be fair with our students, not to taking into account some of very usual movement of a student during the exam that could be considered a violation of the code of the exams or regulation of the exams. So it's give us more confidence about, you know, investing more in technology and investing more into, you know, delivering, organizing online education and online testing and assessment. So I think it was a very good experience.
Okay. Thank you. And I've seen there's a lot of questions coming in. I just want to also clarify for the audience that all of the presentations, the recording, everything will be made available afterwards. So don't worry if you're interested in a particular PowerPoint, that will be made available afterwards, and you can read at your leisure. There's a question for Guangzhou. This person is curious to know more about whether you may have any country examples to share on how countries are taking alternative approaches to high stakes examinations. I think alternative approaches was one of the categories in one of your graphs. What type of alternatives are countries offering aside from online or postponed assessments? So Gwangjal, could you answer that, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so there are many alternative measures that are being taken by countries that we will further analyze and share. One example could be the one that was presented on the case of UK, cancelling at the same time, using different different options in order to come up with something that predict the learning achievement. And there are also many cases where countries instead of organizing high-stake exams would take into account the formative assessment and also the essays and other work that would be asked by students to conduct and which provide the basis for making a decision. And also other options would be also reducing the number of the curriculum content to be assessed, and also the reducing the number of exams to be conducted. At the same time, considering to catch up next year. So there are different measures that are also being taken. Another one is that it's leaving the decision to organize assessment to the distribution of schools and districts. So there are many. So I think we would further analyze and share, structured way, all these alternative forms of assessment, or aspects that high stakes decision making on different forms and alternatives that countries are taking.
Okay, thanks very much. I mean, it certainly sounds like there's a lot more analysis to do of the data that you got through this survey. There's a lot of learning here. Okay, so I have some questions now that talk about the themes of cost and equity. So the first question is, can the presenters give us an idea of the cost of each of the strategies that they're talking about? And then in terms of equity, what can be done in cases where there are online formats, but students can't afford smartphones or laptops or other e-devices for learning? And then the other equity question is, what do you do in the case of learners with special needs and disabilities? And those, particularly in the case of online testing. So I think what I'll do, maybe Professor McGrain, could you talk to the cost question in terms of what is this alternative to the A-levels costing? And then maybe I could ask Vice Minister Moina and Dr. Zaman to talk about the equity aspects of the online test. I know for Ecuador it's in person, but it's still an online test, the equity aspects of their exams for poorer students and also those with disabilities. So Professor McGrain, over to you, please.
Thanks, Marguerite. Yes, I can't actually speak to the costs at all. I'm not aware, but I know that the examinations are prepared by the examination boards well in advance, so they would have already undertaken all of that work, and then they've obviously had to completely change tack in what they were doing. So I imagine there has been quite a substantial cost involved, but I can't put a figure to that.
And are teachers being paid extra to come up with these calculated grades? Do you have any idea?
I can't say from a definitive place, but as far as I'm aware, they have not been additionally paid. That this was expected to be done during regular teaching time, and they were also explicitly instructed not to feel as if they had to do any additional work or assessment after the school shut down in order to make these decisions to avoid any extra workload being put on them.
Okay, all right, very interesting. Okay, Vice Minister Moyna, if you wanted to talk about any cost or budget estimates you have for your in-person exam that is an online format, and any of the equity issues, please go ahead. Thanks.
Yes, well, we already had the exam, so there's not much a cost increase on that. However, we actually have spent more of what we expected in modifying or adapting the exam to the new exam with a pure number of questions to 80 questions, and the process of validation and reliability also takes some time and money. So yeah, that is something that we have to take into our account. And about equity, what we do is being an in-person exam, it actually make it a lot more equitable to everybody. We offered it to take it at the universities authorized in Ecuador. We make it in terms of fairness. We believe that we make it very fair for everybody in terms of condition, in terms of I don't know, weather, time, same kind of computer, same internet connection, speed, and besides that, for some students with disabilities, we try to make some or either appointments, special appointments, or we try to deal with any kind of measure that we can as a government take to have their exams and to be very equitable and fair for them.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Zaman, can you speak to the equity issue for your online exams, particularly for students with disabilities? Okay, please go ahead. Thanks.
Yes, I think it's a very important question about equitable opportunities for all students to get the exams. And I think what we have done here in Saudi Arabia concerning this issue is particularly for people from disadvantaged background, that we it's about 30% of the target student. We offer them the to come in a very safe environment in about 62 computerized testing centers around the kingdom to have the exams. And for this student with you know, kind of physical disabilities, you know, in terms of, you know, but they still can do it using the computer device. We have, you know, like a special settings for them in about more than 50% of these centers around the kingdom. But we still actually need a lot to do more, particularly for this blind student and student with other kind of physical disabilities, you know, to be sure that our computerized approach to testing is more accessible to all students.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to go to a topic that always comes up when we're talking about exams, and that's about cheating and honesty. And there's a few questions that come at this issue, and I'll let each of the presenters decide which one they want to tackle. So for example, there's a question asking, how does artificial intelligence work in securing the integrity of the examinations? Another question from YouTube, how sure are we that the person answering the online exam is really the student, not someone else answering for them? Another question, do you think the results of a test are valid and reliable when evaluating students through the online format? Well, that gets more validity than cheating. And another one, how the academic honesty during exams will be ensured. And what about the acceptance of these results by universities from other countries? You know, how are you going to handle if students want to attend university abroad and have to use these results for their application. So maybe let's, Guangchul, do you want to reflect on any of them in terms of what came through on the general survey results? And then I'll go to the individual country presenters.
Thank you. Regarding this alternative approaches to high-stake exams, my colleague just posted the preliminary results that we analyzed. There are cases of countries in different modalities of alternative alternative measures that taken. So you can see there the post by Huang. Otherwise, the integrity, privacy, and relevance, all these dimensions I think are very much issues raised in different education systems. One of the also aspects that I'd like to say here is that also the reliability of the results. We know that there are some students who are better when it comes to paper test, while there are others who are better when they are tested online. So I think we cannot say that which one is the best in terms of assessing the reliability of the results. But on the other hand, I think the world is going to it. I think we have to think of in the future coming with a kind of a hybrid system of how, because we are going towards the validity of kind of the blended learning system. So when it comes to assessment also, this could be an opportunity. We have to go also a combination of online, offline, in-person kind of assessment system, so that we could leverage the best of what different forms of assessment platforms or ways of assessing could offer. But when it comes to protection, validity, and all these questions, data privacy, and so on, I think I would like to turn to country representatives, because they do have all these findings, which can be very different across countries. Acceptance level will be different. So back to you.
Okay, thank you, Carl. And maybe Dr. Zaman, could you come in on the cheating issue and online exams? Because I think a lot of those questions were very pertinent to what Saudi Arabia is doing.
Sure. Let me just make an example of myself as a student who is willing to take the exam. It's multiple stages I have to go through. All I have to register for the exam. In the registration, I have to submit my ID online and also take a live photo at that time from the camera of my computer or from my smartphone. Then at the mandatory mock exam, there's a list of instruction and videos I have to go through before the mock exam, and you know, the computer, the application for the exam will also take another photo of me at that time, and also after finishing the mock exam, they will give me a report about all the movement I have done during the exam that might violate the regulation of the exam, of the actual exam later on. All students who get through these steps will get that report, you know, about, and it's more than 98% of the whole students get that before the actual exam. During the actual exam, the student will log in. The camera should be open in the laptop. It's okay to be offline because all the movement, all the activities in the computer or in the room will be recorded by the camera at that time. And then when the student finished, I will submit the exam online. And with the videos, that is, a video file that accompany the test, the questions and the answers. In the review of this, first of all, we will check the identity of the student, that the student who take the exam, he's the same one who registered for the exam, and the system took his photo earlier. Then we'll go through the AI analysis of the video that has been taken during the whole time of the exam. If the AI detect any violation, and it's very sensitive, even they detect, having the ear covers or something like that, or some eye movement outside the screen, something suspicious. If there's any other programs try to be open in the computer, or other machines try to be connected to the computers, so it's very sensitive. All this report has to be reviewed. Then, if there's any mentioning of violation, has to be reviewed by human reviewers. And then also, if it's confirmed, another inspector will look at it again to be assured that it's really a violation of the exam. Then the decision has to be made about, just considering the exam for that student, or considering his grade, or whatever needed, as according to our regulation that has been set before and explained very clearly to all students before starting the exam.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zaman. It's a fascinating example, and I think Saudi Arabia, Ecuador, and UK, I think all of these will make great case studies, and I hope each of the presenters can write something up on each of these cases, or if the World Bank or UNESCO can do it, because these are so rich with information for other countries. So I just commend all of you for presenting this and sharing it with all of us tonight. We're over time, so I'm going to have to wrap it up. But I do want to see if our Global Director, Jaime Saavedra, is on, that maybe if he could say the final words to everyone. Jaime, if you're there, would you like to try saying a few words before we sign out? Let me see.
He's there, but I don't know if
yeah, I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, Jaime? Okay. All right. Okay, maybe I'll just leave it there. But on behalf of Jaime, the World Bank, UNESCO, and UNICEF, thank you so much to everyone. The event was recorded, the recording, the PowerPoints, all of these materials will be available to all of you afterwards. There were such great questions in the chat box. I wasn't able to get through all of them, but thank you so much. Just reading your questions have given me so many thoughts and things that I think UNESCO, the World Bank, and UNICEF can keep working on. And I just commend our presenters. Thank you so much to all of you for giving us your time and sharing your expertise tonight. So on that note, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Everyone stay safe. And I wish everyone well, and hope all of these examinations and their alternatives work out well for the students and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Okay.
bye.
Okay, goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.